Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes here to get logged on, and we'll be right with you. All right. As we're getting people logged on and ready here for our 2 o'clock start, I just want to go over a few quick housekeeping items. First of all, welcome to our webinar today, brought to you by the Hatch and Leap teams. My name is Kelly, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm on the marketing team here at Leap, and I'm very excited to be hosting this session and talking with everybody today. Just a few quick housekeeping items to cover before we get started. I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to the GoToWebinar control panel, specifically the questions section down at the bottom there. Feel free to enter any questions or things you have throughout the presentation into that chat box there. We'll be keeping an eye on those, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of the session. And you can go ahead and use that chat box now to just say a quick hello, let us know where you're calling in from. I'm based out of our office in Maryland today. Well, actually home, as I'm sure most people are. Oh, we've got another Marylander on there. Hi, John. And this webinar will be recorded today once we kick things off, and you'll be getting a link to that recording after the webinar, so you'll have that to reference back to and share out. All right. Got it. Welcome, Jason from Indiana. And we've got Brian joining us from New Jersey. Welcome. So today we'll be having Tom Bash, our Strategic Partnerships Manager here with Leap, talking with you along with Chris Bash, and I'm sorry, Chris, I'm totally butchering your last name, but Chris is the CEO and founder of Hatch. And he'll be talking with us a little bit today about some tools to help businesses operate more efficiently in the future. And welcome, Mike. All right. And for those of you just joining, once again, we'll be recording this session, and we'll be providing the link to that recording after the webinar today. If you have any questions throughout the session, feel free to enter those into that questions box down below. All right, and we're right at 2 o'clock. So I'll turn this over to Tom to introduce himself, give us a quick overview of Leap.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate that. I'm going to give everybody just another 30 seconds or so. I see a lot of people still trickling in. If you're here for the webinar today with Hatch and Leap, you're in the right place. We're going to get started here real shortly. I just still see the attendee numbers climbing, so just want to make sure everybody's in and has their audio ready to go. If you don't mind, or if you've just joined us, I know Kelly went over this a minute ago, but in your GoToMeeting control panel, there's the ability there to chat and to ask questions. If you'll get acclimated with that and just see, type something in there like where you're from, the team will be able to see that, and we'll know that you're in the right place. Awesome. Well, again, welcome everybody. Looks like we'll go ahead and get started now, just to be cognizant of everybody's time. Welcome to the webinar today, 5 tools to work on today so you're ready for tomorrow. I'm, again, Tom Bash from Leap. Really excited about this partnership we formed with Hatch. Hatch is a fantastic messaging platform that you'll learn a lot more about today. I'm excited to have Chris on as a co-host. And I will hand it over to Chris to let him introduce himself and Hatch.
Hey everybody, my name is Chris Bache. I'm one of the founders of Hatch. A little bit about my background, and I'm hoping the internet doesn't go out here, but it seems like everybody's working from home and pulling off the same bandwidth. A little bit of my background, the company's been around for 5 years, and the entire time we focused on the home improvement space. All of our customers are in the home improvement vertical, and we're really passionate about helping home improvement businesses grow and increase their close rate and drive down their cost per opportunity. So I'm excited about this partnership because of what Leap brings to the table with sort of the whole sales process and how we can help with communicating with those customers once they get a quote using Leap. So I'm excited.
Awesome, thanks, Chris. So just to tell you a little bit more, I know a lot of you may be familiar with Leap, and some of you may be familiar with Hatch. So just to give a very high-level overview, Leap's digitize the in-home sales process, and in today's world, that also means the remote sales process. And so what we've done is really digitized all those steps. So if you think from formulating an estimate to developing a proposal and contracts, e-signatures are really big. So the integration we have with DocuSign is seeing a lot of use nowadays. Several different financing integrations that work with all the different lenders that you use, as well as CRM integration. So this is where Leap's able to connect with those CRMs, pull in customer data, and when you get done with the sale or the appointment, push that information back into the CRM, which is then where Hatch can really do its magic. But again, Leap, its application really is helping to automate the process and eliminate those manual errors. In today's world, help take away paper so you can do these contactless appointments.
Thanks, Tom. That's awesome. A little bit about Hatch. Hatch is a business messaging platform for home improvement companies. And we were really built to help do two things: increase your close rate and improve your lead conversion, or bring down your cost per opportunity. And we do that by giving you the tools to communicate with your customer at the right place and at the right time. So we're combining things like text messaging, email, and phone, and then working with home improvement companies to automate complex conversation workflows. One of the things we'll talk about today, one of our favorite use cases, is rehash or revisits. And right now, during COVID, there's a lot of money to be made in rehash. It's about how you do it strategically, how you handle objections, who handles those objections. We can automate a lot of those complex workflows using Hatch, learning off of the data that's inside of Leap. And that's why I think this partnership is so exciting. And the last thing we do really well is enable you to collaborate inside of your entire organization. So you can pass conversations off appropriately to the right person at the right time. And we're noticing that really increases your chance to close a deal or get a lead to convert into an appointment. Really quick, I want to talk about, our partnership. This is sort of an introduction slide into some data that I'm going to show you guys that I think is really interesting. Leap digitizes your entire sales process, and Hatch is going to help you centralize all your sales conversations across text, email, and phone. The impact to the business outcome obviously is increasing deals, and I want to show you guys some things that we're thinking about that's relevant to you today. We are not tone deaf. We understand, because I was telling Tom earlier, our organization has really become a customer success organization over the past month, where we flipped from doing a lot of outbound calling and selling to putting our arms around our customers because of the way that homeowners are responding to home improvement companies. There's uncertainty. It's causing more canceled appointments. Yes, there are some fewer installs, and potentially it could be hurting cash flow. So when Tom and I talked about putting this webinar together, we thought we'd put together specific plans around how to continue to drive more business for you guys. So there is opportunity out there. Let's talk about the opportunity that still exists. No matter what state you're in, almost all of them, home improvement is considered an essential business, and homeowners are still active. We both have a partnership with Modernize that has a unique perspective on both sides of the marketplace, consumer and home improvement side. I want to show you some data around there. The second thing is we're going to be going over some virtual tools that are moving the business forward with some use cases where we are seeing revenue being driven virtually. I think it's fascinating and will probably continue to be part of home improvement in the future. It may not be 100% of how you drive revenue, but I do think it will be a percentage of you driving revenue in the future, and I'm excited about that. And then talk a little bit about May pipeline. Through Leap's ability to quote and through Hatch's ability to see conversations, we actually tie into CRMs and therefore have exposure to pipeline. And it looks like jobs are coming in and things are being pushed to May, which is exciting. First, let's talk a little bit about, this is data from Modernize. Just a quick blurb on Modernize. They're like Home Advisor. They're a lead aggregate where homeowners go to a website and say, I'm interested in windows, doors, solar, roofing, put in their information, and home improvement companies buy those leads. What's interesting about this relationship, this is data they gave to us that we could share. We thought there would be a major decline in the amount of homeowners that were searching for a home improvement contractor in the month of March. And while there was a decline, it was only 2%. That's a really good sign that says people are at home. Probably the wife is looking at the window saying, when are we going to get these things replaced? And they're filling out lead forms. So there's still demand on the homeowner side. And I think it's the home improvement company's responsibility to make sure they communicate properly with those folks on how they're handling the situation and how they can still do appointments and installs, so on and so forth. So I think this is encouraging. This is directly from Hatch's conversation platform, where we measure certain things like engagement rate and sales. Engagement rate is up 9%, and I'll define what engagement rate is in a minute. Remember, it's a very important metric that tells you that people are engaging with your company. That means they're talking to you. If people are talking to you, you can turn them into sales most of the time. Month over month sales were actually up from February. Normally we see a larger spike because of the seasonality of the business, but still 33% above February total sales. So sales are still coming in, and we're going to give you some strategies today to talk about that. One thing that's interesting that we did notice is that the average selling price is down just a little bit. So some of those volume type deals, if you're selling windows or maybe the smaller projects for remodeling, are appropriate to target and have conversations with, because those deals are still getting done. A little bit of more data. This is from Google, for my data geeks out there that love to know like what's happening on the search side. This is just a quick look at the amount of searches done on Google for the word roofer over 90 days. You'll notice that there isn't really a major drop off. It's not dropping tremendously, which means consumers are looking for roofers. I think that's really encouraging. So now that we talked about the data that says that some things exist out there for us to take advantage of with homeowners still looking to get home improvement projects completed, let's talk about what it means for Leap and Hatch. I know I had 3 people reach out to me and say, well, what does it mean and how does it work? We're going to go through that. Our goals, obviously, at Leap and Hatch are aligned. We want to help you shorten sales cycles and increase your close rate. So I think this is going to be a tactical sort of go-to-market you can implement in your business tomorrow. Real quick, I'm going to cover Rehash, and then I'm going to pass it over to Tom to start the story of Leap and how that's going to work with Hatch. But let's talk about Rehash for a second, because that could mean different things for different people. What we found out in our 4 or 5 years in business working with home improvement contractors is that all rehash means is organized professional sales follow-up designed to increase sales. And this is about following up with people who have been quoted, and sometimes it includes people that cancel before they get quoted. But most of the time, it's taking quoted information, which ends up being about 70% of all the customers that you see that do not buy, and having conversations with them, drawing out the objection of why they didn't buy, whether it's cost, price, timing, financing, and then turning that objection into a sale. So let's talk about how to execute rehash, and I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. It really comes down to 4 major tactics, and you can do this whether or not you use Hatch or not. Number 1 is be the first to get to the lead after the quote is given. We have data on this over the past 4 years that shows where customers go to your competition after a certain time frame, and so we have some specific data around how quickly. The second thing is you need to increase your engagement rate with some sort of automation and messaging, and I'll talk about what engagement rate means and how this plays together. Third thing is you need to understand objections you're getting from your customers, and leadership in the organization needs to see those objections so that you can delegate the responses. So think about somebody that gives you a price objection and says, I wasn't expecting a $25,000 quote, I was expecting 12. Who in the organization should handle that and can flip that customer to value and still sell the project, or maybe retool it or re-engineer it? And then the last thing is you need visibility and accountability into every conversation. If you're able to set that up in your organization, we work with companies that have gone from a 30% close rate to a 45% close rate. So it's pretty interesting. So let's talk about, first of all, speed to quote when it comes to rehash. This is data that we collected over 4 years. You can see the first 3 days is where 80% of your engagement takes place. That means customers responded on day 1, 2, and 3. After that, the response drops off and it goes to customer no response. You probably have that disposition in your CRM somewhere. That's because folks are waiting too long to have that objection conversation. You need to do it fast. You need to do it, we recommend either the next day or the day after. We call it the 48-hour rule, and this data proves that it works really well. The second thing we talked about was engagement rate, and I just want to define that. This right here is an actual dashboard for one of our customers. The idea is you need to get as many objections as you can. It's a simple sales game, but doing that can be difficult. Think about it like this in this example, 700 contacts got rehashed in the month of March. They got 567 responses. That's an 81% engagement rate. That allows you to talk to 8 out of 10 people that did not buy, just to put numbers simply. From those objections, you get them in the right hands, you can see they make quite a bit of sales. The other part of the strategy obviously is multi-touch. So rather, we see SMS working really well right now, text messaging, we're getting a high response rate, but you need to include email and probably calling in there as well. So this is a very easy to use template. You can implement this today inside your business where you say, hey, whoever's in charge of this, whether it's a call center or sales manager, these are the 4 touches I need you to do, and these are the channels I need you to do them on, and how quickly you need to do them. And the last part, which is, this is the part where I see most companies don't think this through well, but you need to choose who will be responsible for rehash. So I would go back to my company today and I would say, who's going to handle the pricing objection? Is it a rehash rep? Is it my office assistant? Is it my call center? Is it a sales manager? And who's got the skill set to look at a quote, to go into Leap and reorganize a quote, re-engineer, and go through these things and actually flip the customer to buy. If you get a high engagement rate and you're talking to 80% of the people that didn't buy, trust me, you can flip 15% of them if you do it right. So this part is really critical to making sure that rehash is successful. So sales process with Leap. Tom, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you.
Yeah, awesome, Chris. Really appreciate it, man. You're dropping some knowledge here today. I mean, this is really good stuff. I think people are going to take away
Thank
a
you.
lot from this. So I wanted to kind of talk about how this all works together, right? Like big picture. And so I'm going to take you through a few slides here that just kind of talk, uh, um, give you an example of how you would use this in relation to Hash. So naturally, we'll start at the point of sale. So within Leap, it's pulling in that customer data in from the CRM. It can also pull it in from, say, a Google Calendar or an iCalendar. But the important thing is that information is being pulled in here, and it's important because when we're done with this, we're going to push that information back, which is then going to be vital for the success of your rehash efforts. So from there, one of the first steps, and this is again very critical for rehash efforts, collect as much data as possible. So there's a nice field within Leap that can be repurposed or left as is, that it's labeled surveys. And within that surveys field, this is where you can actually customize and set this up to collect that information from the homeowner. So things, are they interested in financing? How long are they going to own their home? How old is their home? Have they ever done anything to their home before? Asking all these questions that also help serve as a warm up. But what you're really doing here is building this database, if you will, for that property, not so much the customer, but for the property, that you can then use later on to cross sell. If you sell them a roof and you want to sell them later on siding or windows or vice versa, right? And then just being able to utilize this information for rehash campaigns and for upselling campaigns. And so then from the after you've collected that data and you go to build an estimate, again, just a quick slide here just showing you the capabilities and functions to be able to not only estimate roofing, of course, but siding and windows and baths and kitchens and decks and concrete and everything else that you want to be able to provide an estimate for. But moving on from here, the other important thing is if you're there for a window estimate and you capture that window estimate, but that homeowner may be also interested in roofing or siding or anything else that you've identified down the road, capture that, create that estimate. And if that homeowner is not ready to go forward with that project today, that's still great information to have for down the road. And again, when we talk about rehash and cross-selling and upselling campaigns, this information will be valuable in those efforts. So after you've presented or have formulated those estimates within Leap, it then move on to the proposal section, and here's where you're going to present all your price and your payment options. So pretty short and sweet there. Again, all customizable. But from there, you're going to move on to the contract portion. There we go. And so within this contract portion, you're going to, again, customize this field to how you want it, but essentially create that virtual doc within Leap, that digital, no paper contract, and either send that or sign that. And so when we move to the next slide here, I'm going to show you the functionalities within that contract allow you to just apply an e-signature on there or utilize that DocuSign feature and send that contract over to the homeowner for signature. Now, we all want to be able to go through this process and close the deal right there on that first visit or that first appointment. But we know, and data backs us up, that we're only closing about 30% of those appointments, right? So it's really important to get these steps right and this process and this flow right, because that 30% that's signed right there, that's great. But now you've got to account for it and treat that other 70% that doesn't close. And so this is where we found a lot of value in partnering with Hatch, because Hatch is going to pick up on that 70% to help you close those. So I'll hand it back now to Chris to kind of walk through how Hatch plays into this post, creating a contract and sending that out.
Awesome, Tom. Thank you. That's so great. I mean, everything you said right there, and I hope folks picked up on that portion in Leap's product where if you're training your reps appropriately, they're going in and quoting siding, roofing, and windows, right? Like they're going to quote the entire project. Now, the homeowner might do part of it, and we call those one partials or partial jobs. But the fact remains 50% of the revenue driven from our communication platform comes from upsell. How powerful is that? So the more data you collect, the more opportunity you have to write rules around those type of contracts. For instance, give me all the customers that bought just windows but were quoted siding and roof. You can find all those customers quickly using our platform and then send messages to all 200 or 300 of them and start conversations. It's pretty powerful. I want to show, though, on this one, Tom, just real quickly, an example of rehash. So text is a huge part of what our platform does because consumers love it. They read it. 9 out of 10 people prefer it. And the trick, though, with texting is that we know that you have to be able to do it at scale with a large amount of leads. And then you're going to get a lot of not interested at this time, wait till later, but you're going to get some in there that you need to jump on immediately. And that's where Hatch is really powerful. So let me walk you through this real quick. So imagine that you just went through the flow that Tom went through. You filled out your quote. You're one of the 7 out of 10 people that do not buy. That's the customer. Automatically, Hatch is going to pick that up because we use automation and integrations. You don't have to even think about it. You write a rule. That rule picks up on that and sends Josh a text and says, "Hi, Josh, this is Chris from ABC Windows. Great to meet you earlier today. Send a quote to your email. Have any questions?" Now you're ensuring professionalized follow-ups happening for every single one of your customers. The customer doesn't respond. So it's interesting. We have found that it takes 3.5 attempts sometimes to get people to respond. So if you do rehash after 24 hours, expect 3.5 attempts on average to get somebody to respond. The system knows that and will automatically send that follow-up text or drop a voicemail. "Hey, just left you a voicemail. Due to the recent events," and we can use this during COVID, like right now, "we have a lot of inventory on hand and would like to offer you a 15% discount if you're able to get your windows installed by April 30th. Just a way to get somebody to respond. It's appropriate now, might not be appropriate later, but that's some interesting verbiage that we see working really well. The customer then responds and says, "Yeah, but still too expensive for us right now." Remember, you're drawing out objections because objections is how you start a conversation that you can then turn into a sale. This is where Hatch becomes very powerful. The sales manager gets notified, jumps in the conversation. John over here, real good looking guy, says, "I understand the concern. With the recent Fed rates, offering 0 down and 0 interest, we may be able to get your monthly payment around $75. The customer is like, "That sounds interesting. Give me a call." Imagine having those at scale all the time with your organization. That's how you turn your close rate from 30% on average to 35 or 40%. And we see it work time and time again. Real quick, and that's really, I think, the Leap Hatch connection, which is, Leap's collecting all this data and doing quotes. That data is a gold mine for you guys for upselling and for rehashing. Just a couple other virtual tools that we're excited about that we're helping folks use today. Go through these real quick. Whereby is a partner of ours. We like that because it's like Zoom, but you don't have to download an app. It's right on your browser. Hover's a partner of ours. They help with 3D models. Company Cam. Tom will jump into that a little bit. And of course, Leap and Hatch. So I'm going to pass it over. Tom, you want to talk a little bit about, and I know you know this one pretty well, so if you want to talk about these partners, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Hover's a partner of both of ours. I'm a little bit familiar with them. And Hover plays really well into this whole idea of rehash, right? The ability to re-engage with that homeowner and share with them a 3D model of their house. I mean, it just makes perfect sense to want to include a Hover like this. I think most of you are familiar with Hover, but they provide 3D models, measurements, all via smartphone photos of a property. So moving on to Company Cam, again, really great tool here to have. again, let's say that same customer came back with a question. Well, can you explain to me, why you wanted to, why there was a leak around the outside of my window, and you can respond with including pictures of that, right? And so that they know that you took the time to address their concerns and weren't just giving them some blanket kind of proposal or contract, right? Everything that you're doing is pertinent to their house. And so it's great to be able to have that documentation and that communication with the homeowner. Awesome. So Chris, I'll just jump in here again. Before we move on to the Q&A section, I want to let everyone know on that go to webinar control panel, there's a spot there for questions. You can also utilize like the chat field in there. But you'll see a poll here that's popping up. We want to get your take on if you'd like to learn more about Hatch, learn more about Leap, both, or maybe you're just really busy right now and don't have the time. So feel free to answer that, and we'll then move into the Q&A portion of this.
Very cool. Let me open up the questions here.
Yeah.
All right. Looks like the poll's about closed, 23% submitted. What are some best practices? You want to go through these questions, Tom, with me?
Yeah. We'll tackle these together for sure. So we'll just look at the first one and we can both tackle these, but what are some best practices of virtual appointments? That's a great question. So a couple of things with virtual appointments, they're different than being in person. And I'll say you really need to ensure that the reps that are accustomed to going in the home are able to keep that same kind of flow when they're doing it virtually. I think it's important to really hone in on that sales process that you're using, whether it be a 10-step process, 12-step process. Everybody kind of has a different one, but making sure that they maintain that routine, if you will, and even practice it better, because one of the things you'll find out is it's a lot easier for a homeowner to say no when you're doing a remote presentation than in person. And so a couple things there is like, whenever possible, turn on video, engage with them, take active pauses throughout the presentation, give them a chance to respond and ask questions, you want to keep them engaged throughout that whole process. And then when it comes down time to close it, you really want to make sure that, as a good friend Rodney Webb says, you're closing those doors to the walk of life, right? Like you're answering and handling all their objections throughout that process, but give them time to engage with you. You want to keep that engagement. That can sometimes be harder when you're doing it virtually as opposed to in person. The other thing too, just make sure you're ready and able to facilitate that deal from start to finish, right? So again, touting Leap here, of course, like the ability to have everything digital, to send those contracts for a DocuSign, like you want to make sure that you have all those systems in place to where you can actually facilitate that close.
I love that, Tom. The only thing that I wanted to add, because I think you pretty much covered everything, but Steve, if I was you, I would come up with what I call talk tracks. It's an old inside sales technique, but essentially writing down and coaching your reps on a talk track in phases. So phase 1 is how do you introduce yourself in the company? Phase 2 is how do you get measurements while you really can't be in the home? Phase 3 is how do you ask discovery questions? And so you already have your sales process probably laid out that you have coached people on forever. You need to document that and then hold a training session where you give these folks talk tracks that you can hold them accountable to. And so what we're seeing is on our side too, is that people are using Hatch and text messages to get the conversation started. Then they're sending links via text, which you can track in Hatch, which is interesting, and then follow the talk track, just like an inside salesperson, but have that virtual face-to-face through Whereby or Zoom, so you're looking them in the eye, and it's working really, really well. A stat that I thought was incredible was 3 weeks ago, through our conversation platform, there was 0 home improvement virtual appointments 3 weeks ago. Just last week, there was over 246. So there are companies that are adopting it. They're bumping their way through it like you would expect, but I think they're going to come out on the other end way ahead of their competition, and they're going to offer it in the future no matter what, and it's going to be a leg up. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's great. So we have another one. Have you ever seen someone close a deal without visiting in person? Yeah, it's a great question, and absolutely, I'd say I'm hearing a lot more about it now. I think because people are forced into that position. But even before this, right? There's always there's been a shift to this kind of mentality, right? And a lot of it has to do with the demographic of the buyers. There's more millennials buying homes than ever before. So people are starting to expect that, right? It's the same generation that's buying things through Amazon and cars online and all these different things that you can buy now online without needing to interact with someone face to face. Not to mention that you've got a lot of households that maybe both spouses are working. They've got they're moving kids around. They just don't have time to sit down for 3 hours with somebody in their home. They're looking for these alternative paths to purchase. And so absolutely, yeah. And I've heard about it a lot more recently. And again, there's several different ways to facilitate that sale without having to go on site.
It's a great question. The only thing here's an interesting story my roofers on the call will enjoy. Roofer in Richmond, Virginia, using a drone to quote, hover, and I don't know if it's Leap, but using a Leap type system to send the quotes, getting jobs done, never talking to the customer, and adding like a 5% buffer for miscalculations. And so it is being done. I'm seeing it done. It's an interesting story, but definitely seeing it done out there. Good question.
Yeah, great question. Another question that came in asking about financing. Does Wells Fargo allow for DocuSign with Leap for their credit app? It's a great question. I'm not sure the way that the DocuSign integration works within Leap is that it's native to the contract portion, and so the way that Leap's creating these contracts, it's a dynamic creation, and so there's not per se. I think a lot of people are familiar with like a document, and if you've ever used DocuSign, you're kind of putting a placeholder on top of that PDF. You don't do that within Leap. When you create a contract, it's automatically placing those signature fields in there. So you're never, putting a sticker, if you will, over that field to be signed. It's all custom generated. So that's a great question. Leap's integrated today for financing with Service Finance, Green Sky, AmeriFirst, Enterbank, Fortiva, Foundation. Gosh, I'm probably forgetting somebody. I've got 7 different finance lenders on there. So if you're interested in that, again, reach out to us afterwards and happy to walk you through that more.
Good question. Are there any other questions out there we can answer?
Nope.
Nope.
Well, hey, Chris, that's great. I'll wrap this up with it. Everybody, then let everybody get back to their day, give them back some time. If you're interested in either Leap or Hatch, go to the websites on your screen there. Reach out to us, and be happy to give you a more inclusive look at both technologies. So appreciate everybody joining. Thanks.
Really good. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you.
Yeah, likewise, Chris. Thanks.
Bye.